Hello and welcome back to the final video of HTML2 CSS fundamentals. I hope that you have learned a substantial amount of information to code to improve the appearance of your website. And in this last video, I would like to talk about the main ideas or main topics that we covered in this course. Just to touch everything very quickly, we talked about the CSS introduction, and within the introduction we talked about what is CSS, and we explained that CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it is the standard language for defining styles on web pages. And CSS is more widely used for its application to the HTML documents. For example, if you have an HTML document, CSS is applied on an HTML document so that you can enhance the appearance of your documents. And if you remember, we talked about how CSS was like HTML was like controlling the structure of the web, and CSS controls its presentation. And if you also remember that CSS does not work without HTML, you actually have to have a strong HTML framework or a strong HTML code on which CSS is applied. Okay, and these are the topics that we discussed. We talked about CSS syntax, and within the CSS syntax I talked about a lot of things. For instance, we covered how CSS syntax is different from from HTML syntax. Okay, usually you have a selector property, and then on the selector property the code is applied. Okay, for example, if you have h1, the h1 is the heading. In the heading tag, the code, color, blue, font family, font size, all these properties are manipulated within your selectors. So you have CSS syntax, and then you have CSS class. And in the CSS class we talked about how CSS is very object oriented, and it uses the dot class. For example, I'm just going to do it quickly here. You can easily have call a class within your program, dot class, call it by its name with a curly bracket open, and invoke its property and assign a value to the property. So this is the basic method of calling any class within CSS. Now CSS has already a plethora of classes pre-made for it, and these classes enable you to not to reinvent the wheel. You can actually take a class and use it within your code without having to write lines and lines of code. So one of the main advantages of CSS is, unlike HTML where you had to define every single thing on the page again and again, CSS prevents you from writing the code again and again. You can simply call classes and you can use them again and again throughout your code. Okay, and in the CSS class, after the CSS class we covered CSS ID. Within the CSS ID, I spoke about how it allows you to assign a unique identifier to an HTML element. Okay, and this will allow you to define a style that can only be used by the element you assign the ID to. For example, if you want to make things very specific, some kind of appearance very specific to a particular element of your page. For example, you want to apply a specific color to only the headings of your page, you can apply ID. You can use the ID syntax. Okay, and ID is very simple. ID name, just like classes, you have the ID syntax which goes something like this. You have to add the buffer sign in front of it, ID name, and call it by property and then assign a value to the property. Okay, and this you can call by the id, number, name again and again throughout your code. Okay, this is just for explaining purposes. Then we spoke about something very famous, the font, text, background. These are the three very famous, very obvious aesthetic part of your web page. And what we did was we used the font, syntax, the style of the font, which we were able to manipulate, the style, font size, size adjust, font size stretch, font style, font variant, font weight, font property. All of these things we discussed within the font, and I hope you are able to control your HTML documents in a greater depth and a greater detail using the HTML2 course, the CSS. Then we talked about the CSS text, and in the CSS text we talked about further how the paragraph tag can be manipulated, okay, using text align, text indent, letter spacing, word spacing, text decoration, text transform, text direction, and text shadow. All of these we learned how to manipulate them in the CSS text. And then we did the background code, which was a lot of fun. We played with a lot of colors. We manipulated the paragraph style property, and within the style property we talked about the background. Okay, we talked about the background color. Okay, and you could assign it yellow. The entire paragraph is going to be yellow in color. Okay, you just have to be very careful with the syntax. Any missing semicolon, colon, dots, inverted commas, all of these, anything missing, your code will not work. Okay, which is why we use the notepad, so that we could learn everything from scratch. So because the main advantage of using any kind of the coding environment is that the editor would do a lot of things for you, and you wouldn't understand why some things have to be done. So this is like learning from scratch, so it's a very good exercise. Then we did a CSS border, in which we learned how to create borders around our text. With again, this was the style property of the paragraph. Any element that you want to apply border to, you need to manipulate. Border property is available in the style property of the any element that you want to manipulate. Border width, border style, border color, and we played with a lot of border styles, and we did a lot of shorthand properties. You just need to go back and refer to that particular video to get a skinny on that all over again. Then we did a margin, and the margin would help you how this is the margin, for example, how the distance between the text and the imaginary boundary around the text. Okay, we set up the imaginary boundary, that's the margin, and the padding was the imaginary distance between the margin and the text. Okay, how much padding or how much space you need to have between the boundary or the margin around the text and the text itself. We manipulated that. All of this leads to the improved or enhanced appearance of the text, enhanced appearance of the website. Okay, now my dear students, do not forget that you need to apply what you learned with me. All you need to do is create a blog page of for yourself, and within this blog page, just write away. It's like a diary. Okay, keep writing, and in this diary you would come across, for example, anything creative you did, any creative activity, any event coming up, or any list, to-do list, bucket list, any travel sites that you wish to see, all the things that you need to do, that you aspire to do, that you want to do in your life, you can write about that. What would that do? Well, that would give you ideas on how to put in images, how to set borders, how to improve fonts, and that would help you apply a lot of CSS on your HTML page, so that your HTML page that you created in the previous course would look very different after the CSS has been applied to it. If you're not interested in a blog page, simply go back and redo your the e-portfolio that we did in HTML1. Just redo it and apply all what that we've learned in this course. Apply CSS to the HTML that you've already done in your e-portfolio, and you would realize that you would be able to appreciate the difference between a plain vanilla and a flavored web page. And that's just my simple way of explaining the difference between two, so you would be able to appreciate all of that. Then apart from pairing, we did lists. Lists are very important. For example, if you have a bucket list or a to-do list, or a milestone list in which you want to jot down all the things that you want to do to accomplish a certain goal. Maybe you have weight loss goals, maybe you have career pathway goals, maybe you have educational pathway goals, maybe you have the tons of goals that you can have. Okay, you have a big project that you want to tackle and you have a span of months. So for that you need to know how to manipulate with the lists. And in lists we learn how to do the ordered lists, and we learn how to do the unordered lists. Okay, and we also learn how to add bullet lists, numbered lists, and also we learn how to add image icons in lists. So a lot of interesting things that you can add to your website. Then we did the height and width properties, in which we manipulated the height and width of a paragraph. Supposing a paragraph is blue in color, the entire page is white, or the entire section is white, the paragraph itself is blue in color. You can adjust how, is it square paragraph, is it a rectangular paragraph, the length, width, all of these things you can manipulate using the height and width property. Then we did the positioning. For example, this blue paragraph is located in this part of the section of the in this part of the section. Is it located in this part of the section? All of this can be done by the relative position, absolute position, and fixed positioning. We did that in positions, if you remember. And then we did layers, and in layers we learned how we could superimpose an image or a figure or a drawing or a shape on top of another. We learned that. And finally we came back and just wanted to congratulate you for making it to the end. And in this entire course we learned that CSS will help you manipulate pages, and we learn how to code and implement CSS using the inline, embedded, and external method. So we learn all of these methods as well. Okay, and we learn about classes, IDs, and applying styles such as font, backgrounds, borders, margins, and more. And then we covered more advanced topics such as position, float, layers. All of these are advanced topics. Okay, and we also created layouts. It would help us eventually create layouts. Okay, and if you are satisfied with this course, please comment, please let me know how we can improve the course for you, what else you need to make this course better for you. And if you need any kind of help, please email me at zubia@qualityforlife.ae. I will be very happy to help you. And with this, I would like to wrap up this course, the HTML1 and HTML2 series. Thank you very much for your time, and I hope you are able to take this course further in your life and make it, make your web pages more embellished and more enchanting than before. Good luck. Bye bye.